So today I want to talk about all my different systems, tips, tricks, all the knowledge that I have when it comes to writing. This is for newbie writers, published authors like me, people who are getting ready to publish their books, established authors, or people who are even just considering getting a career in this kind of writing field. I love sharing knowledge, and I do not think that there should be any gatekeeping when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I just finished redesigning my personal notebook that I use to keep all my writing content in. So I want to go over this notebook with you guys and talk about all the different things that I do when I'm writing my books and what I have learned over the years. And it's a different background today because there is a mess over by the bookshelf where I normally would record, and I don't feel like moving it or sitting on the floor today. So I'm here at my desk for you guys to talk about all this. So the first big trick, or the big guideline I use for myself when writing, is the big 4 questions. Now, I don't remember exactly where I found this. I think it was a TikTok. If I still have it, I will link them or tag them. I don't remember who it was I got it from, but if I do, I will tag them. But I have these big 4 questions here, and I'm going to read them out to you. These are different points throughout your book. These are when these points should happen and what you need to be thinking about in your book. My examples that I use, I have a 50,000 word book example, a 70,000 word book example, and a 100,000 word book example. Because novel length, and I'll get into this later, novel length is 40,000 words to be considered a novel. Most books nowadays are around 70,000 words, and some of those really epic and stupidly long books that we loved in our teens were 100,000 words. And I've even read fanfics that are 300,000 words, and I don't know how they do that. I think my longest book was just over 100,000 words, and I think that was Searching for Home. All my other books kind of range in the 70,000 mark, and 70,000 is about my goal when it comes to writing, so I will be using that as my benchmark for each of these questions. The first question you want to think about is, what is the inciting incident that forces your protagonist out of their old comfortable world and into their new one? This needs to happen around the 10 to 15% mark in your book. That needs to happen around the 7,000 or the 10,500 word mark. Somewhere within that range is when that would need to happen for a 70K book. The second question is, what is the midpoint of the story where everything changes for your protagonist? This should be at your 50% mark. 35,000 words for a 70K book. So this should be dead middle of your book. Everything kind of is an upheaval. Everything is changing and they're trying to figure it out. The next question is going to be, what causes everything to fall apart for your protagonist towards the end of the story? This is not very long after everything changes. This is the 60 to the 70,000? 60 to the 70% mark in your book. In a 70,000 word book, that's around 42,000 and 49,000 words. That's about when this should happen. And the fourth and final question, and what I think is the most important question, because I definitely got this wrong in my Blood of the Coven book, and it still bothers me, even though it's published and I'm not going to fix it. It bothers me, because the fourth question is, how does your protagonist overcome this seemingly impossible obstacle and emerge victorious? This has to happen in the 90th percent of your book. Those last 10% of your book is when this needs to happen. In the case of a 70,000 word book, that's the last 7,000 words. So the last couple of chapters. There are some books that I've read that have ended too suddenly, and I think those are the ones that have the fourth question here happen sometime after the 90% mark, closer to the 100%. But I do think that you need to make sure in your book that after that impossible event happens and they survive, you need at least a chapter or 2 of decompression to wind down the book, to come down off the high of the battle or the event. So I think 90% is a really good benchmark for that final question. So I try to use these as a guideline when I'm making my plots for my book now, so that I know kind of how much I need to fill in and how much space needs to be between each of the main events. And if I know what the main events are, the big bullet points of the plot, it makes writing the rest of the book a lot easier. Another thing that I have, and this falls more into the editing side of things, I have this character checklist here at the very end of this list. This is where I check off things about my character that I need to describe after seeing them. Obviously, when describing a character, you do not want to do like an info dump mirror shot of the character, like them looking in a mirror describing themselves. That is still a huge no-no in books. So like after you've introduced the character, you want to slowly sprinkle this stuff in to build your picture of your character. So I have their skin tone, their eye color, their hairstyle and hair type, their body type, the clothing they wear, what their voice sounds like, and little mannerisms. And mannerisms are a big thing. Those I have learned make your characters feel more real. When your characters have little quirks and little mannerisms that they do throughout the entirety of the book. Just sprinkle them in there, like if they're nervous and they pick at their nails, if they have a penchant for flipping daggers when they're bored, like something little that is just so them, it makes your characters feel so much more real. So mannerisms are like my big character check sheet that I have. Now, I have a huge section here on magic and hard versus soft magic and kind of how to work magic into your books. Instead of reading this whole thing to you, in my bio of this, I'm going to link some videos that my brother showed me years ago on hard magic and soft magic systems and telling the difference between them and how to work magic into your books. Because I could probably do a whole video on this, but I'd rather give the spotlight to the creator that I originally got these from. There will be a link down in the description of the playlist for the magic systems. They were by, 𝘓𝘓𝘮𝘓𝘓𝑚𝑒. I have my Xbox on right now so I can see my TV and I was checking my YouTube. 𝘓𝘓𝘮𝑚𝑒 did a bunch of videos on different types of magic systems and how to incorporate magic into your books. And like, all of his videos are really good to watch. I love his content. I want to get his book at some point that has a lot of his content in it. These videos are old. The original ones that I watched are now 6 years old, but they are still exactly what you need when it comes to writing magic systems. The big notes that I want to give to you guys when it comes to writing magic systems is a big red flag that a lot of people don't pay attention to in their stories is if you can remove the magic system from your book and your book still functions perfectly fine, then it's not a good magic system. The magic system needs to be integral to your story and your plot and your world. If you can remove the magic and the world still functions, then you should not be using a magic system for that book, or you should rework your magic system. That is the biggest takeaway from all of his content when it comes to magic. The green flag that I have written down that you need to remember when it comes to magic systems, because yeah, I literally did a little red flag, and a little green flag to remind myself. The green flag is that magic should be predictable and consistent, and that goes with both soft and hard magic. Soft magic is less predictable, but it still needs to be consistent. The consistency is what matters, because if you can just use your magic to solve any problem in your book, then that is just, it takes away from the plot and the story, because you know as the reader that you could just use magic and solve your problems, and that is not a good way of using a magic system. I also have some notes here at the end of the magic systems on hidden worlds and how best to have your hidden worlds, and I think the big takeaway from the hidden worlds is that your magic system and your methods for preventing your magic world from being discovered, if it is a hidden world, don't need to be perfect, because you need that little bit of, hey, this could get out to society, to build tension in your story. Tension is a very, very big part of all stories. Magic, non-magic, fantasy, sci-fi, mystery. Tension is what drives a story, and tension is something that you desperately need in your books. I do think a couple of my early books and a lot of my early writing lacked tension. There wasn't any desperate need in the story for things to happen, and there wasn't time crunches, or there wasn't enough pressure on the characters to do things. And I think that's one thing that's very, very important to your story. I feel like I'm kind of all over the place here with what I'm trying to say, but my notes are kind of spread everywhere, and I've been working on consolidating them, and there's still a lot of videos. Like Alexa Dunn just released a video not too long ago about writing multi-POV, and I want to watch that and take notes on that and add that to this book as well. Probably would have been helpful when writing 737, but I want to watch that so I can understand better and do better with my POV in the future. Now, more onto the technical side of things, I did extensive study and look into different book lengths, different book styles, and every genre is different. When you do research for your books, you need to focus on the genre that you are writing in. I write fantasy and sci-fi, which are fairly similar in style when it comes to the technical side of it. Formatting is fairly universal across genres, but this is going to be a fantasy sci-fi focus because that's the kind of books that I write. I write for the fantasy sci-fi genre, so I'm going to have notes based on that. If you write in mystery or thriller, you're going to want to find other creators who write in those genres to better help you. Alexa Dunn would honestly be like a huge recommendation for me for thriller and mystery. She has been writing really good in that genre with her books, and I do love her books and her content. But for novel length, for fantasy, I have found after doing a bunch of different research and looking at different books, the average length you want your books to end on is somewhere between 70,000 words and 110,000 words. I feel like going upwards of 120,000 is definitely pushing it, and those work better for authors who are well established or have just the authors that somehow got ridiculously popular. I myself do not prefer those books that are ridiculously long. I prefer the more digestible, smaller novels. And chapter length is another big thing. I found it best to keep your chapters between 3,000 and 5,000 words. Now, obviously, pacing-wise, you need to do what's best for your story. I have seen books that do amazing with chapters literally with one word as the chapter, or chapters that are just a short page as a transition piece. It all depends on what works best for the story that you are trying to tell. But for most average chapter lengths, you want to stick within 3,000 to 5,000. But you also do want to vary your chapters. And that's why there's kind of a caveat to this. The average length is 3,000 to 5,000 words, but your chapters need to be varied. If you have a similar chapter length across your entire book, the pacing is not going to be there. It's going to feel like it's moving in a steady, standard pace, and that's not really what you want pacing-wise. You want to shake it up. You want to throw a short chapter in every now and then, a long chapter in less often, but it wouldn't hurt to have 1 or 2 long chapters in there. I did that for my first book and then overcorrected for my latest book. And I did much more cohesive, same style chapters, all kind of similar length. I way overcorrected. And that's part of just the advice about being an author from me, is that you learn as you go. Every time you write a book, you learn something new. And you may overcorrect, you may undercorrect, you may take and go a full 180 from what you've done and then realize that's not right. It's all about fine-tuning your process to what works for you and what's best for writing your book length. So while I am giving you some tips and some advice here today, take all of this and then apply it to your own writing and fine-tune it for yourself. Every author is different in how they work their books. Some of you may not even actually write novel-length books, and I have focused all of my content on writing novels. There are plenty of other kinds of fiction out there. I actually have them all written down because I did this research way early on. Because flash fiction is anything under 1,000 words. Short stories are between 1,000 to 10,000 words. A noveletta is 10,000 to 20,000. A novella is 20 to 40,000. A novel is 40 to 120,000, and now we have epic novels, which are 120,000 or more words. Those really became popular in the 2000s, but there were the Twilights, the Harry Potters, the later Harry Potter books, Cassandra Clare's books, The Court of Thorn and Roses series, or Sarah J. Maas's books, I think are also that long. I do not like Sarah J. Maas, but her books are like considered part of the standard, so I did have to like do research to find her book length and chapter length and add that to my measurements, because that is the standard in the industry. I still had to use all the annoying authors as the standard. Which, as another piece of advice, and I've reposted some of these videos on my TikTok, and I have them saved in this little, I have a little favorites folder on my TikTok that's called reminders. And one of the things that I always see is that, hey, some of these really famous published authors have some really jank writing. Their writing is not that good. They have moments in their books where you're like, hey, an editor really should have caught this. And if even amazing published, or well, quote unquote amazing published authors, or I guess popular published authors, are making mistakes, then you can make as many mistakes as you want. You are going to make mistakes. Your novels may not always come out amazing, but they're your passion and your work. And if they can get their novels published even with mistakes and being horrible people, then you can get yours published. Trust me. It takes time and patience, I think, to really be an author. And I'm learning the patience part right now myself, because I definitely am struggling with mental health and everything, with not being able to write sometimes. And I have a whole nother video that I'm going to make. I think I want to put it out either next week or the week after, talking more about how to handle mental health as an author and the struggles of being an author and wanting to publish full-time. But just reminding yourself that it's okay to struggle, and it's okay to have days where you don't write to. That is another really big piece of advice that I have. Continuing on the technical side of things, another big, like, game-changing moment for me when it came to my writing was learning active versus passive speech. I believe, if I remember correctly, we want more active speech. We don't want passive. Active makes us feel more engaged with the writing. And this is very technical, because the difference between active and passive is where the subject and the object are in relation to the verb. So with passive speech, you usually go object, verb, subject. With active speech, you do subject, verb, object. So the examples that I have on my little sticky note here that I keep above me is that in passive speech, it would be the ball is being chased by the dog. Object, the ball, verb, it's being chased, and the subject is the dog. But in active speech, it would be the dog chases the ball. The dog still being the subject, the ball is the object, and the verb is still chasing. So you can kind of hear the difference in the way it is said. The ball is being chased by the dog versus the ball chases the dog. There's more action, there's more movement. That changes the tone of a story. And this works in past or present tense. I know that is still a huge debate, from what I understand, in the writing community of whether to write in past or present tense. I chose to write in present tense. And that is a very, very personal preference for me. I know a lot of fantasy books are written in past tense, but for me, there was something more comfortable about writing in present tense. And so I chose to write in present tense. I did take like a whole year when I was working on Blood of the Coven. For most of that year, I wrote this in past tense, and I did not like the way the book felt in past tense. So I had to then go and edit it by hand and go through and change everything to present tense. I think there may still be some hiccups in here every now and then because of that, but there's something about present tense that I prefer in my writing, and that is a personal preference. Tense, I do think that even if the genre has a standard when it comes to the tense that you write in, I think it's more personal preference. I think whatever you as the author feel comfortable writing, as long as you are comfortable writing it, that is going to be what works best for you. Because if you are uncomfortable with your writing, it's not going to come across well, and you're gonna struggle with your book. So figuring out if active or passive works better for your book. Active is more than likely what you would want. I think that active is the way to go. It makes your books more engaging and active, and, well, literally active, but it makes the books feel like they're moving more with doing a little bit less work. And then figuring out whether or not you want it in past or present tense. That one is completely up to you. There is no standard, in my opinion, for that. Another big piece of advice I have is I have a list of words, and I would suggest everyone create themselves a list of words that they notice that they use too much in their writing, and try to, on like the second or the third draft of your book, go through, find those words and find ways to remove them from your book, because those are going to be like your filler words. My list continuously grows. And I also have a sticky note, and this may just be for me as a dyslexic. I have several words that are hard for me to spell, and so I keep a sticky note near me of those words so that when I am writing, if I put that word in my book, I can turn and double check it. I have another video, it's going to be with the mental health, about my dyslexia and writing, and so if you guys are also dyslexics, you may want to check out that video when it comes out later, because I have so many little tips and little tricks to do to help you when it comes to writing with dyslexia. And this one's not really a note, but it's more just a reminder for myself. When I first started writing, I suffered from white room syndrome. I would be great with my dialogue, I would be great with my characters, but I was really, really bad at describing the scene, setting the scene, making people feel like they were in the world of my book. I've come a long way since my very first book that isn't even published, where I just immediately jump into dialogue and assume everyone knows where we are in the book. I've come so far since then, and I'm very pleased with what I've been able to do with my books now and describing the scenes and getting like the feel of the world in the book. So I have like a little reminder just off to the side when I'm working on my books that is like, hey, describe person, place, and thing, and make sure you set the scene. So just reminding yourself or jotting down a reminder like I do, because I have so many sticky notes around me when I'm writing, but jotting down just a reminder for yourself to make sure that people know where you are and make sure that you describe what's around you in some way. It doesn't have to be a big Tolkien expose of the scenery and the trees and the grass. It can be just something simple of, hey, this is where they are, this is what the scenery looks like, we move on. Or, hey, we're walking, we're talking, we walk over this into this, and we move through this scene, and then we continue our conversation. Like, it doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be if you want to. Starting your books or starting your chapters off with sometimes describing where the chapter takes place, especially if you've moved locations, that is good. But it doesn't have to be an all the time kind of thing. I didn't even know white room syndrome was a thing. When I learned that that was a thing in writing, I was like, oh, that's what I'm doing. So I hope that I've given someone else that aha moment as I had, because learning that changed my writing drastically. The last technical note that I have is that I write on Microsoft Word. I hate using Microsoft. I wish I had a better platform, but I can't afford any of the really nice editing platforms, and Microsoft is the most affordable way for me to write, edit, and publish my books. So I have a Microsoft Word layout format. I'm going to throw it up here and leave it here kind of for you guys to see, but this is my Microsoft format. I have perfected this over my 3 books. As you can see, Planet 737 was my outlier because this is the one that I tested that didn't work, but this format is the perfect format to get the book style that you would see on bookshelves in a bookstore. That's a tongue twister for dyslexics. Oof. But this is the size that you're going to want to use. I have the paper size, the font that I use, the font size, the way you should format the headers, the footers, the margins, and the paragraphs. I have it all written down in a little format section on my book that I reference. And I would even recommend formatting your book or formatting your document before you start writing. Because I tried to get myself to do the page-a-day writing technique, but I thought of it as a Microsoft Word page, and that is daunting. So if you change it to this format, writing a page a day is 10 times less daunting, and it makes it so much easier to see yourself progress with your book. I have started this with my next book, and it is I keep saying game changer throughout most of this video, but this last year has been a big year of discovery for me when it comes to writing. And this in particular is the thing that has changed the way I work on my writing and the way I talk to myself when I'm writing, because I was never gentle with myself as an author. I was very harsh and very critical. But now I am learning to be gentle with myself, but I am also like finding ways to make it easier, and formatting it like this and then writing in this format to start with changes everything and makes me feel much more accomplished in my writing. Now, the last little bit I want to talk about is just some overall advice. I don't have any of this in my notebook. This is just overall advice that I want to give to other authors, indie authors, published authors, or trad pub authors, indie authors, newbie authors, aspiring authors. My biggest piece of advice, if you take anything away from this video, is that I'm sure a lot of you have grown up hearing the phrase, write what you know. And I hated that phrase. I grew up in a very traumatic household with a lot of stuff that happened to me, and I did not want to write about it. I had a couple books that I loved reading about it that made me feel seen and good, but I didn't want to be the author to write about that. But it's what I knew. Instead, what I have learned and what I am working on myself right now is write what you're passionate about. It does not matter if you know the subject super well or not. You can research, you can study, you can read other books in that genre, you can learn more about the things that you are going to write. You can learn as you write. When I wrote Searching for Home, I barely knew anything about pirate ships, but I got books, I got documents, I got video games that helped me. Like, I did so much research to learn about sailing and pirates to be able to write about pirates. I didn't know any of that before writing it. I learned so much while I was writing it, but I was passionate about pirates. At the time, I was watching, one of my favorite pirate shows was airing. My brother was running a pirate D&D campaign. A couple of the games that I was playing were all pirate-based. The pirate fairs out here in California were really big back then. So like when I was writing Searching for Home, everything around me was pirates, and that's what I was passionate about. So I wrote about pirates. And that's the thing, when you are passionate about something, it doesn't matter if your work is good, bad, if it could use some improvement. It does not matter. When you are passionate about something, the passion shines through everything. And that is what sells a book more than like doing what's popular right now or what other authors are doing. Your passion for your work is what sells your books. That is my biggest piece of advice. Write what you're passionate about. That is why I am uncovering and dusting off a bunch of old book ideas that I had put aside because they aren't popular right now. They're not popular, not a lot of people are reading them, but they are still something I think about on the daily, and I am very passionate about those old books. And I am bringing those back to the surface because I want to write what I am passionate about. Write what you want. Do not let the industry or other authors or readers or anybody push you in a different direction. And if you don't think your work is good, that's okay. You grow and learn with every book that you make. Every time you write, you are growing and you are learning. Doesn't matter if you write a sentence, a single word. Every time you put thought into a book or into an idea, you grow as an author. And there is no limit. This is an exponential growth kind of situation. You will always be growing. It doesn't ever get to a point where your books are perfect. I don't think any author would say that their books are perfect and their books are amazing, unless they're a narcissist. But we don't like narcissists on this channel, so we don't listen to narcissists. Nobody's books are perfect. There's always going to be little things that you can nitpick at, little things readers can poke holes into. Books aren't meant to be perfect. That's the thing. They are a craft. They are an art. Art is not meant to be perfect. Nature isn't perfect. I use nature as an example because it's one of the things that I draw a lot of my inspiration for life from. Nature has imperfections and flaws and weird glitches in it, and that's okay if your books are like that too. If any of your art is like that, it's okay. Fighting your perfectionism is very, very hard. I told myself that I wasn't going to ever dust off those books until I was perfect and I could write them correctly. And I realized that was what was holding me back. Because I was so hung up on this idea of I need to be the best author possible, I have not let myself be passionate about my books in a while. And so that is like, what I'm trying to say is that it's okay not to be perfect, and your books are amazing, I'm sure of it. Even if you don't feel like your book is amazing, someone out there is going to love it. It doesn't matter if it's one person or a million people. When you have one person who adores your book and will talk to you about it for ages and tell you how much it means to you, that one person means so much more than if 1,000 people read it and told me they didn't like it. You write because you're passionate and you want to share it. And when you share it, people will love it. And you won't know how people are going to react if you don't share it. That'd be my next piece of advice, is just go for it. You won't know until you put yourself out there. I did this on a whim, thinking I was not going to find that passion again for my writing. And instead, I have blossomed and flourished, and I haven't sold 1,000,000 copies or even 1,000 copies, but I have gotten this book to a handful of people, or gotten my books to a handful of people that it means something to. And that's what counts for me. So just go out there and write your books. It's daunting and it's terrifying, but it is one of the most fulfilling things that you will ever have, to hold your creation in your hands. I'm sure a lot of artists can attest to this. Musicians, painters, dancers, being able to hold your craft and see your craft, like a physical form of your craft, in some way, is the best feeling in the world, and you're never going to forget this feeling, and it will drive you and keep you going until you get to a point where you are sustainable. Because it is hard. I'm not gonna lie. Being an author is hard. I consider myself a full-time author, and my best friend supports me. He has one of the most amazing jobs right now because he makes over like $22 an hour at this point. And he is basically my caretaker. He pays for our apartment, he takes care of the groceries and all of the big important things. And I get to work on my books. Not everyone's gonna have the luxury of being able to do that. A lot of authors have to have a full-time day job and do their books on the side. But getting to do your books is still worth all the risk and all the struggle, because the feeling of getting your creativity out and writing the passion and seeing your books is worth it. It is worth it no matter how hard it is. And like I said, it is hard. It is super hard some days. I haven't written in like 2 months right now because of how much I've just been so down about money and thinking maybe I should get a job. Which those never panned out, and they made my mental health worse, which then made my writing worse. That is why I have chosen to put my writing and my mental health first. Not always a choice that everyone can make, and not a choice I would recommend you make if you are not in a financial place that you can do that. But for me, it is what I needed to do to be able to write. And because of that, I have grown, I have so much stuff that I am now sharing with all of you guys out there, and I just want to encourage you to go out there and do what you are passionate about. Even if you're watching this video and you don't find your passion in books and writing, at least you tried. And hey, maybe you'll find that passion in something else. Painting, video game design, who knows? There are so many creative avenues in this world that I don't think are explored enough. And I really wish we would encourage creativity more in people. I hope that you took something positive away from this video, something to help you with your journey and your process as an author or as a creative or just as a human. I have a lot more videos like this coming out in the future, and as I learn more tips and tricks, I will repost them on my TikTok, share them on my socials, on my Patreon, on here. I will work to, when I learn something new that helps my creative process, share it with all of you guys, because I do just think knowledge is very, very powerful, and you should not withhold that knowledge from people. That's why writing rooms worked. people working together to write books, writing clubs, work. All these things where you come together as a group to work on a creative project, they work for a reason. It is a collaborative field, no matter what you are doing in the creative world. Thank you guys, though, for watching this. And like I said, I do hope you got something positive or helpful out of this video. And I hope to see you all in the future continuing to do what you're passionate about. If I've inspired you to do anything, tell me about it. I'll check it out. If you have a book that you think I might enjoy, let me know. I'll read it. I love sharing and spreading joy, passion, and creativity. That is my mission here right now. I'm now gonna go work on one of my books, actually. I have the energy today and the inspiration from recording this to go work on my books. So I'm gonna take some time and work on my books, and hopefully I will have an update for you guys at some point before the end of the year on what's coming next from me as an author. If you've watched to this point, thank you for watching this far. Share this with your friends and other people whom you think might need this video. And like the video to help spread it around YouTube to get it to more people, and just thank you for being here with me on this journey. Even if this is the only video of mine you watch, you're still here with me on this journey, and I appreciate that so much.